So here are some examples that you're welcome to kind of go through on your own. Again, some of these are reviewed. They're ones we've already talked about. So as you're going through, you might ought to just refresh. And I did add some of these examples also. Sent them out an announcement and added them on the home page also in the bottom right. It'll say digital essay examples. You can come back to these. I want to talk about a couple of these. We talked about this one in terms of design already. I want to talk about this one. This was one that we already looked at, but I want to make a quick point. So the design actually in this one has, and make this window a little bit bigger, has a lot of really good things happening in terms of the color scheme. Well, I can't seem to make the window any bigger. I want to get more of this. Sorry, I want to get more of this page in, and it's just not working out for me very well. Maybe this helps. Okay, so as I'm scrolling through, I want you to see like the tone that she created. So she's doing horror films. The tone that she created was great and very appropriate. She has patterns, so she has good solid like direction and repetition for her titles, the way she's using design. So everything works really well. The one thing that could have been a little bit improved, again, we talked about visual weight. There's not a lot of visual weight given to the text. And if you look over here, one thing I want to note is that, you know, the smaller the font is, the more seriously we take it. However, if it's not split up at all and you have these giant walls of text kind of shoved into the box, it doesn't put a lot of visual weight on them. And it also makes it a strain for the reader. I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but, you know, when text is broken up into paragraphs, that's not just like it does help the ideas flow better. It's also a cue for the reader to know when you're going into another kind of sub point. So it is really important in these sections that you're creating to make sure that you are thinking about paragraphing and splitting up your text into the different ideas and the different sources and different things that you're covering, and that you're not creating a wall of text. If you may not have noticed this before, but if you were looking at this particular block, you're probably not super excited to read it. Whereas if this were more kind of split up and spaced out and, you know, possibly like images and visual cues with it, it would be a much easier read. So you kind of want to pay attention to that too. So just that visual weight and space. See if there's any others here that I want to pull up. I'm going to let a couple, one or two load actually. Okay, so we talked about this one and this one. I'm going to come back to this one. So mental health in the homeless community, she picked a somber kind of tone and kind of kept that consistent through her whole portfolio. But if you look, she kind of, this is an example of nonlinear. She sort of split it up into 3 parts, and you are actually prompted to read like one part than the other. It's not completely self-guided, but there is kind of a note like of what that section is about, which is really important at the beginning of all of your sections to let the reader know what that section is about, what the takeaway point is. Then you can click on it and read more. This one is about human trafficking, and again, I wish I could get more in the window, but this is more of a kind of a raising awareness page, and she picked a very appropriate tone. She uses contrast and emphasis to let you know like what to look at, where some of the like links are where you should read. It's not linear. She uses a lot of kind of digital tools that are appropriate to the genre that she picked. She uses good repetition and spacing. In terms of like her titles and the way everything kind of fits together. Again, it's not linear. She has this section for just how it affects people and tells stories, and puts those sort of kind of side by side and kind of chunks it up a little bit. So just an example of kind of, and it is a little bit more of a linear page, but does a very good job in terms of like appropriate genre, like design concepts. We're going to also look at this one. This one was designed to look kind of like a magazine. And it didn't necessarily do the columns, but it was a very good like digital magazine. like way of using like the same like fonts and features and things like that. So she did do it more like a linear page, which was actually really helpful. She had appropriate font choices. She did the standard like larger, different color, like first letter of the paragraphs, the way you're supposed to when you do a magazine. She chose a very like effective font, and the spacing was pretty good. There were a couple little issues here. But for the most part, like this is kind of a standard, like one way, and a little bit, you could have wrapped some images here so you can kind of have a little bit less white space. But for the most part, like this is a pretty good, like standard, like use of like magazine, like design features. In terms of font and tone, and it was a very appropriate tone for her topic. One of the other things you can do is use these quotes. A lot of magazines will do the big like block quotes throughout, and you for that can also use quotes that you already, and they do too, like use quotes you already have in the paper. So if you have like a quote that you think is really impactful, then you can still have that in the text, but also create a big block with it also, and create kind of a visual also with that quote. And you're welcome to look through some of the other ones. We're going to kind of move on a little bit and look at just some kind of basic examples, I think. Just to like review like good and bad design examples here. So for this one, again, like this is the better design, because as you see over here, there's not really good like proportion with use of white space. This could be better contrasted. This could be a little bit bigger, because again, like you want the title to have some visual weight and some contrast, and so this one does, whereas this one doesn't. So sometimes like just having appropriate like contrast in size and colors can be really helpful. Again, over here, one of the things over here is just the proportion and the spacing. There's not even a title here, like for this image, but it's in a different column. And again, like the text wrapping can make a big difference, and you probably noticed that when you were looking at we look at some of the samples. Lots of things kind of squeezed together here, so you could see like how the spacing and the proportion and the balance is just a lot more reader friendly in that way.